You're listening to Puma Podcast.
There's a myth because the stories sort of change as the years went along. But the myth was my great granduncles were on that boat heading to Australia. That boat leaving the Middle East had some problems and they had to head back. And the closest place they could, were to get to fix the boat was Iloilo. And they had never heard of the Philippines.
Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast. In this episode of Teka Teka News, I pass the mic to Lebanese Honorary Consul, Joseph Assad. We're both descendants of the first 10 families to immigrate from Lebanon to the Philippines. He tells us their story. To your knowledge, when did the first Lebanese immigrants come here? Around when?
Yeah, I'd say the late 1800s, somewhere there, little before, little after. Actually, what was happening back then, they were sort of escaping at that time, it was the Ottoman Empire. There was no Lebanon then. And the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, included Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. And what they were doing was they were drafting all the young boys into the Turkish army. And of course, not being Turkish, they didn't want their sons to go and fight and die for the Turkish army. So a lot of them left the Middle East, not just Lebanon, not just Syria. A lot of them left for Australia. So when they landed here, 10, 15 families, among them my granduncles and your great grandmother, got off the boat and said, "That's it. We'll get off and we'll stay here." And they made the Philippines their home. The boat actually, after they fixed it, continued to Australia. So had that not happened, you and I would be Australian citizens. Yeah, I know. Twist of fate, you see. So those 10 families, which include the Kairuzes, the Gorayibs, the Karams, the Juraidinis, to name a few, and of course the Ismails were among them, called it home.
Did they settle in Iloilo for a time or did they go straight to Manila?
No, they went all over. In fact, we have the Kairuzes family all the way in Tuguegarao up north, you see. And then we have between Iloilo, Davao, Cebu, Manila, they spread out. They didn't know each other actually. They settled here, they did their little businesses here, and all of them were successful. They all succeeded here in the Philippines one way or another. And especially the Ismails, they were the royal family of the Lebanese who were here in the Philippines. I remember even as a child going to the Ismail steel factory. They would take us from school and show us this steel factory. And among them were your great grandmother, Doña Magdalena Hemadi, right?
Magdalena Hemadi was actually my great-grandmother's grandmother, so I know very little about her. She was born in Lebanon in 1879 and died in Manila in 1955. Her first husband was a Lebanese man who died at the age of 44 in 1908. His name was Juan Ismael, the name a number of my relatives still carry. The Ismaels ran a sizable steel company, and from the 50s to the 60s, owned a basketball team. Magdalena's second husband, Kemal Hemadi, was Lebanese too. Together, they developed what we now know as New Manila. Between the 30s and the 70s, New Manila's residents included President Manuel Quezon, Benigno Aquino Sr., Don Vicente Madrigal, and Pelito Corrales. The main street, Pacifica Avenue, was later renamed Doña Hemadi. When I was younger, I thought the street was named after her because she planted all the trees there. I'll sometimes pass it now with mild fascination, not quite fully able to grasp that it was once an idyllic place, built by the people who are the reason I'm here today.
There's also the Karams from Iloilo. In fact, the first Lebanese to be very famous was Governor Karam of Iloilo. There are a few notables, like, for example, the Bichara family. Al Francis Bichara was a governor of Bicol, Albay. He was a governor, then congressman, and then they appointed him ambassador to Lebanon in the days of Gloria Macbagal. And we have one who just passed away last week, Charlie Gorayib. He was the consul of Djibouti, and I think he was 81.
I wanted to ask also, since when have you held this position?
23
Honorary.
years now, since 2000.
And can you talk about how this position came to be? I think a lot of
Okay.
listeners would be confused about what an honorary.
Okay. And what the consul does basically is try to promote trade, and good ties between the country that he is representing and the Philippines. Actually, honorary consuls don't get paid. And, my family's been doing this now for the last 50 years. It was my mother who was the honorary consul in the 60s and 70s before she left back to Lebanon. After she left, they appointed my father as acting consul. And then when my father got older, my brother was appointed consul, my younger brother. And then in the year 2000, to be exact, there was a kidnapping in Sipadan where the Abu Sayyaf kidnapped 21 scuba divers and brought them to the Philippines. There were some Germans, South Africans, Malaysians, and among these 21, there was one Lebanese girl.
The kidnapping at the Malaysian dive resort turned into a crisis that drove international headlines. After the 10 tourists and 11 resort workers were taken from Sidapan, the Abu Sayyaf brought them to Holosulu.
I got a call here in the office saying from the DFA and from my embassy in Tokyo and from the ministry and saying that the father of the girl is coming to the Philippines. Can you take care of him? I said, but I'm not the consul. I wasn't the consul back then in the year 2000.
Who was the consul?
It was my brother. But my brother had left already, had gone back to Lebanon. So he was the consul, but he wasn't here. So the ambassador said, okay, I'm appointing you as acting consul. Please meet the father and take care of him. So that was sort of like a baptism into fire because I had no idea about consuls and what to do. So, well, when the father came, I took him to see everyone from the president to the vice president to the congressman, trying to get his daughter out of this. They told us actually in the president's office, they said to go back to Lebanon to the father and come back after 4 months. Everything will be okay after. And the father and I would just, how could he refused to go back. So the father stayed here for 4 months. And in those 4 months, I got to meet all these, ambassadors.
All 21 hostages were eventually freed after several months of negotiation and reported ransom payouts.
I've been acting consul, then I got they call it the exequatur. You need to get a presidential decree from Lebanon appointing you. So that finally says that you are officially a consul from the country that you are representing. I've been doing my best, ever since I got this position. That was the last thing on my mind, to be consul. But I sort of enjoy helping the Lebanese who are here.
An entire wall in his office is filled with pictures, lined with the faces of his family and friends, but also photos of him and every Philippine president of the last 2 decades. What are the descendants of these 10 Lebanese families up to today? We check in on them after a quick break.
My family got into the textile business and then into the real estate business. So actually, most of my family have left. I'm the only one here. My mother, my sisters, they went back to Lebanon, got married. So they live there. So I go visit them every year or so. Actually, I'm going next month. So I'm excited to be going.
Could you talk more about how your family was able to keep more roots in Lebanon than...
Well, the thing is it's my mother. My father came here with his uncles, his five uncles, headed by the eldest was Noah Israelian. And him and his five brothers, they came here. I think they were on that boat too with your great grandmother. So they came here, they liked it here, and they brought the whole family with them. They had my father come after they did. My father came around 1920 and he was 10 years old. Yeah, basically, it's my mother who he brought here, who's Lebanese, who kept our ties with her family over there.
It's not the same for most of the other Lebanese families who came here over a century ago. And
So,
are they also like you that they visit Lebanon frequently or they still have family there?
no, you see, the thing is, most of them have become Filipino. They don't speak Arabic because they were already intermarrying. So the grandfathers married Filipinas, and then you know how it goes. So they don't speak Arabic. I speak Arabic because my father, instead of marrying like my uncles married a Filipina, my father went to Lebanon, got married, brought my mother here. So my mother didn't speak English when she came, and she was talking to me ever since I was born in Arabic. So my Arabic today is thanks to my mother. But basically, all the other, like my cousins and the rest of the Ismaels, they no, there's no Arabic. They know a few cuss words. Well, they all know each other. We have a small group on Facebook. We've been talking to each other for the last few years. To know how many we are. We're quite a number. What I'd like to do is keep us closer together than we were before. Because before, we all knew that we were here, but nobody really got in touch till I formed this little group of
When did you
ours.
form it?
I don't know, maybe 5 years ago.
Wow,
Yeah.
how nice. And what gave you the idea or
Well, because I know them all, and most of them don't know each other. So I thought, I mean, personally, they don't know each other. So there, they got closer to each other.
and this group chat, if you could give us, an idea of the tenor of conversation, what kinds of things do you
Oh,
talk
everything. We
about?
discuss everything, current events and, birthdays. We're very close,
And I'm
actually.
assuming what brought you together is your parents knew one
My
another.
parents, yeah, most of our parents knew each other.
Mm.
That's how it is.
So you can trace really like these 10 families staying in touch
Yes,
from when they
yes,
arrived.
yes,
Wow,
yes,
that's
and we're very
extraordinary.
happy about that. We're so few. Actually, the number of Lebanese here in the Philippines who came lately, the last 20, 30 years, there must be about 200. But these 10 families must have grown over the years. We must be at least a few thousand, between at least 1,000 of us, between Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, and Manila, and yeah. So we try to stay in touch, and basically our chats are just very, friendly, talking about Lebanon, what's happening there and what's happening here.
This experience of Lebanese diaspora may sound unique, but actually, it's happening everywhere.
In Lebanon itself, we have about 5, 6 million Lebanese living in Lebanon, but in the diaspora around the world, we have over 20 million Lebanese, and we are one of those 20 million. A lot of them went to South America, went to Mexico. We have a lot of Lebanese in Brazil, for example. We have almost 3, 4 million Lebanese there. We have 1 million in Australia.
You were born here.
Yes.
You grew up here. You have
Yes.
friends here, but it seems like you're in a unique situation in the sense that you actually have family who moved back to Lebanon,
Yes.
and you can also trace roots to
Yes, yes.
Lebanon. In all these years, could you talk to us about, number one, why you decided to stay here? And two, you already touched on it, but, how do you think of yourself? Are you a Lebanese Filipino?
I love both countries, and I see myself as in the middle between these two countries. So I'm a Lebanese Filipino, whether I like it or not. Yeah, this small group of ours, Lebanese Filipinos, because we were all born here, raised here. This is home for us. I mean, I might be Lebanese, but my heart is Filipino. I look Lebanese, but I'm really I've lived here. I was born here, raised here, and I've lived here all my life.
That was Joseph Assad, Honorary Consul of Lebanon to the Philippines. And I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. If you haven't already, listen to episode 2 of our Pass the Mic series. Award-winning photographer Kimberly De La Cruz tells me what it was like to trail the drug war. And follow Teka Teka News on your favorite podcast app or listen for free on YouTube. Thanks for listening.